This is the Savvy Investor Podcast. What's happening, Savvy Investors? And I am going to welcome you to our very first episode of the Savvy Investor Podcast. My God, this has been a long process to get to this point here, but we are officially launched. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. I am your host, Mike Ponte. I'm the founder of Savvy Investor and longtime Canadian real estate investor. And again, we're really excited about this. Has been a long journey for us to officially launch this. And really what this podcast is designed for is to talk and continue to support our real estate investing community by talking all things real estate. Okay. Everything. We know there's a lot of challenges out there and people are looking for some help and some support. And this is really what it's designed for. In addition, we're going to provide you guys with a lot of invaluable market insights, some trends that are going to be happening, some research, just again, keep you guys in the forefront of knowing what's happening so you guys can make some of the best decisions for your portfolio. And last but not least, and one of the most important ones, of course, is we've got some high caliber quality guests that are going to be joining us to kind of learn some of the lessons that they've learned. People that have got tons and years and decades of experience that are going to be sharing some of their wisdom with you guys so you don't make some of those same mistakes. How does that sound? And that's really what the Savvy Investor Podcast is. It's a platform for people to kind of look for some support, look for some knowledge, but at the same time, trying to avoid some of the mistakes that others have made in their life so you don't have to follow suit. So thanks for being here. Really appreciate this. And we've got an amazing episode to kind of kickstart this podcast with the Wholesale Genie himself, Jamil Damji. I don't know if anybody knows who he is, but you guys will love him. He is a regular on the Bigger Pockets platform, which is based down in the US. He's got his own show from on A&E called Triple Digit Flip. But for those that know him, he is a wholesale and flipping legend, okay? And truly honored to have him join us. For a lot of real estate investors, this is kind of their first foray into real estate investing. Is they may not have enough money and they're like, well, I got to figure out a way to do this real estate investing thing, but what do I do? And so this is where kind of wholesaling kind of comes in. And so Jamil is probably one of the largest authoritative figures when it comes to wholesaling. He's doing roughly between 60 to 80 real estate transactions a month. Okay. A month, guys. And so he's going to be sharing how he's been able to do that. He's going to be talking about how he's built the right systems to kind of be able to do that and how us as real estate investors can follow suit. But the one thing that I've really enjoyed about this episode is really talking about his very simple, humble beginnings and how he's truly become an investor powerhouse in this space, and really getting into the right mindset. And for a lot of people, this is a big struggle: is how do I get to accomplish my goals? What's the right mindset to accomplish this? So in this episode, we are going to be learning a lot about Jamil's journey, and it starts from humble beginnings to becoming a true investor powerhouse. He's done some incredible things, and his growth has been exponential, to say it lightly. He's doing roughly 60 to 80 real estate transactions, not a year, a month. Okay. 60 to 80 real estate transactions a month. And he's sharing a little bit about how he's been able to scale his business, the right systems that all of us should be putting in place so we can scale maybe to that specific level. He's going to just talking a lot about the wholesale strategy just in general, and also mindset and how important it is to be in that right mindset. From being completely broke to where he's had just huge success over the years of doing this. It is an amazing story. He has dropped some truly great nuggets, and he is truly an inspiration, which you will see in this episode. So make sure you check it out. It's a great episode. Kind of before we begin, I just want to also highlight this episode's sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by our Savvy Investor Trusted Partner, Control and Compound. Are you looking for a creative way to fund your next real estate investing project? Consider infinite banking with Control and Compound as another tool for your financing strategy, where you become the bank using term life insurance. That's right. Get that life insurance policy working for you today. To learn more about the infinite banking strategy and see if infinite banking is right for you, visit the show notes and book your absolutely free discovery call. Infinite banking with control and compound. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Savvy Investor Podcast. I am super, super honored to have Jamil Damji going to be joining us, the Wholesale Genie from the US. And I just found out he's actually partially a Canuck too, so which is
just so happens I'm drinking out of my. This wasn't planned, by the way. I had no idea you're Canadian, and so I literally just have my Calgary mug here out of just pure luck.
Pure coincidence. So there we go, guys. So like I said, truly honored. Jamil, I really am thankful that you're doing this, and especially for us Canucks that are here, listening to this, because again, I would imagine a lot of people, if you're not following Jamil, I highly recommend. He's got some fantastic content out there on his Instagram, YouTube channels. It's just really, really a wealth of absolute knowledge. But for maybe just kind of begin with, for people that don't necessarily know who you are, and again, us Canucks may not know who you are, even though you are partially a Canuck here in Canada. Maybe you don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself and sharing a little bit about your amazing journey, because he's a very seasoned investor. And the one thing that I really like about this, for those that are listening right now that are in the wholesale business, he's like the number one wholesaler in the US. So perk your ears up, gentlemen and ladies. Okay. So Jamil, if you don't mind just maybe doing a little introduction of yourself, who you are and what you do.
Well, I'll use a bad joke here to start with. So I consider myself transnational, right? Because I'm an American biologically, but I identify as a Canadian. So yeah, that's a terrible one. But the reality is, I actually got my start in wholesaling in Calgary, Alberta. And funny enough, right? It wasn't a thing. It's still not known as a thing in Canada. They don't have the term wholesaling there. And so it was just really, really cool how it all went down. So let's rewind to 2002, where I'm just recently got rejected from getting into medical school, and I'm completely like I'm lost. I'm an Indian who's not getting into medical school. What do I do? Right. And so it's like, I've disappointed my family. I'm like, and I did so well in my undergrad. I should have gotten in, but life, God didn't want me there. Right. I had other things to do. And so I'm looking at myself, and I get this phone call from a friend who says, hey, there's a struggling company right now. They're in the business of selling websites. Maybe you can go help them out. And you're a great salesperson. Go and help them. You need money, check it out. So I go, and it was an easy sell for me. I would go into the yellow pages and I would call businesses and I'd be like, hey, you're advertising in the yellow pages right now. I'm sure you're paying thousands of dollars a month for that. There's this thing called the internet. It's going to be more and more important as your business starts to grow, whether you believe it or not. And I can build you a website that's 6 pages for $600. And you should put your web address on your yellow pages ad, and then people can get more information. It's a great idea. Do it. What's your credit card number? And I was so good at selling these at selling these websites to people. The company was like, how the hell are you doing this? Within a week, I sold more websites than they had sold in their entire quarter. And so I leveraged that and said, okay, you guys want me to stay? Give me 51% of the company. I want control. And they were like, okay. So they were like, we're going to close our doors without you anyway. So go ahead. Now I'm really proud of myself now. And I'm like, yeah, man, I own this company and I'm selling these websites, and it's so janky, dude. I'm using a Nokia cell phone from back in the day when Rogers would give you a free Nokia cell phone with a plan, right? And so I'm using one of those because it was like free dials or whatever. And here I am, in this call center on these janky Nokia cell phones selling websites that ultimately actually cost the company $700 to make. And so every $600 website I sold lost us $100. So they didn't even know that. That's how bad the business was being ran. And so within a year and a half, I'd effectively done so well that we were almost out of business, right? And so the reason I tell that story is it put me in proximity to a guy who was doing real estate. And him and his father were having a discussion about this infill that they were building in Calgary in one of the inner city neighborhoods where they bulldoze these little bungalows and put these luxury duplexes up. And they're making $160,000 on this project. And I'm like, what? How? And I'm trying to get involved in the conversation, but they're not letting me. And I'm like, what can I do to, participate? Like, how can I get involved here? Guys, I'm dying on this website journey here. Like, what can we do? How can I help? And they're like, look, you have no license, you have no credit, you have no money, you can't. And I'm like, fine. And then the next thing they say is, if only we could find more of these building lots, man. Like, that's the hardest part. And I'm like, well, I can do that. What are you talking about? They're like, well, we need more of these little bungalows to tear down, right? So if you can find us some of those properties, we'd buy them for sure. And, there I've got the idea, right? So next day I'm out walking my dog, and I live in a neighborhood where this activity is happening. I'm actually like, doors away from this construction, and I see all these things going on. I walked by a house that I tried to rent, actually. They tried to rent it 3 months earlier, but it was like $200 a month out of my budget, just to give you an idea of like my finances, right? So I call the lady and I say, you haven't been able to rent this house in 3 months. Would you sell it? Her answer was, sure, for the right price. I asked, what is that? She said $350,000. I'm like, cool, thank you. I run to the office and I'm like, how much would you guys pay for this house? And I give them the address, right? And they look up and they're like, $400,000 all day. So now I got a $50,000 problem to solve, right? Because I don't have 350 grand. I do have a buyer at 400 grand, and I don't know how to do this, right? I didn't do what most people would do and go to the people and say, I can get you this for $350,000, and then get, pieced out $2,500 as a finder's fee, which is, I think, what most people would have done. I thought about, how do I get involved in the transaction? Like, my mind went there. And so I'm trying to solve this issue, right? So I do what I know how to do, is I go to the Yellow Pages. This is why I was telling you this story earlier, is that I'd been trained, life had trained me to get into the Yellow Pages and have conversations with people. And so I go to lawyers, attorneys, right? And I'm like calling all of them, and I'm going down the list as I would normally. I get all the way to the letter S. This attorney, he's now been disbarred, actually. So unfortunately for him, every time I say his name on a podcast, people might look him up and be like, oh, this guy's not even a practicing lawyer. But once lawyer David Steed is the guy who changed my world, because he told me about this mechanism called a skip transfer, which is what you guys do in Canada, which is where you skip you transfer your position in a contract and skip it to another person. And so, ultimately, it's what we call in America an assignment, right? I assign my contractual rights to somebody else and I take a fee for it. And so he explains this mechanism of how to do this deal to me. And he's like, look, it's really simple. You're going to take two contracts, one where you're the buyer, but you have to make sure on your contract you write your name, Jamil Damji, and or nominee. And then you have to purchase for $350,000 and all that, like closing date and title, your escrow company and all these things, your closing attorney, whatever you're using, they all have to be the same info, right? And he's like, okay, you fill that out on the buy side and then take the sell side. And now when you're selling it to the guy at 400, you're now the seller. But I'm like, I don't own it. He's like, it doesn't matter, because when it flows through, you will be. And I'm like, okay, I understand. He's like, for a moment, you'll own the house and then you won't. But in that moment that you own the house, that's where this contract is going to come into play. And now you're going to be the seller to this ultimate buyer at $400,000. But everything else has to line up. So you have to put my name as the attorney. You got to put the closing dates, got to be the same, have the same earnest deposit. All the things that are on the contract have to line up, and nothing can be different. And then bring those two contracts to me once they're done. And I'm like, okay, and then what'll happen? He's like, well, I'll do a thing called conveyancing, where I'll look at the mortgages, the liens. I'll see who all needs to get paid off, if there's judgments, whatever. And I'll make all those arrangements to take care of all those encumbrances, and I'll create what's called a clear title. And when I clear the title, I can then sell it to the person who wants to buy it for 400 grand. And you will get the pass-through money, which is the difference between the two, minus my fee. And I'm like, so $50,000? He's like, well, about 47 and change, because I'm going to charge you for it. And I'm like, okay. So I do it, right? I put this thing together, and lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I got a cashier's check for $47,000 and change, that I was so fearful of cashing that I didn't cash it for 4 months.
Oh my God, really? Wow.
Just, a kid who grew up in Northeast Calgary, I didn't have a ton of resources. My parents worked 12-hour days. I was born in a mindset of poverty, right? Of scarcity, of there's never going to be enough. In fact, my grandmother's motto was, we don't have any money. And she used to say that to me in our language all the time. And it like imprinted itself into my subconscious. And it was one of the things that I had to reprogram myself out of, because I knew that was the ceiling that created the lack in our family for generations. And she didn't create that saying. Somebody gave her that saying. And somebody gave that saying to somebody else. And somebody gave that saying to somebody else, and so on and so forth. So generationally, we've been cursed with this idea that we don't have any money. And she was trying to install that program in my head, and I rejected the installation. An error message came up. And so here we are, right? I start my journey in wholesaling in Calgary, Alberta. I start mining the classified sections. For all you millennials who are like, what the hell is a classified section? Is what used to be at the back of a newspaper. And they would have all, you could find everything in the classified sections, from houses for sale, houses to rent, to escorts. Everything was in the back of a classified section. It was a wild, wild west of business back there. And back there, there would be a rental section, and I would look at all the houses for rent, and I would call them all, and I would ask them if they wanted to sell. And then eventually, I moved from single family to apartment buildings, and I started wholesaling apartment buildings in Calgary. And then, yeah, that led to a massive boost in my finances until I went too far for my own good. I started wanting to get into the development side of the business, and my timing couldn't have been worse, because I buy 4 apartment buildings in 2006, end of 2006. I get highly leveraged to do the construction, and then come mid 2007, I'm upside down in all of them. Bank called all. That's one of the things that in Canada I think is really oppressive, is your banking laws. It's real. I mean, compared to the United States, Canadians have a really bad shake of how banks can oppressively take advantage of you guys. For instance, you don't have 30-year mortgages. Why? Why is a bank allowed to change the rate on you in 5 years, depending on the market? In the United States right now, we have 70% of our population is sitting on a rate 2, 3, 4%, and they're not going to sell that. And that is going to create wealth for that family for the generations. Meanwhile, in Canada, you guys got a good rate for 5 years, and then it's going to reset to the crap that we've got right now, and then that changes your entire economic outlook. How are you going to be able to forecast how you're going to do in life in 5 years? And so, I find that criminal. And why is the government backing the banks to do that? Where you've got an example of how it works the other way right across the border here, right? And so it angers me. Sorry, I'm like, I'm getting fired up.
Yeah, like, you know what? We can talk all day about politics in Canada, and trust me, there'll be a lot of people loving joining this discussion, to be very clear. It's a frustrating component for a lot of people. And so, the one thing, just maybe to correct, that there are 30-year mortgages, but exactly like you said, the biggest issue that we have is just these interest rates. It's just an insanity, and these fixed, the reset, right?
You got to reset the rate. You get a 30-year mortgage. Yes, they amortize it over 30 years, but the rate resets every 5 years. That to me should not be allowed. If you lock in a good rate because of an economic windfall in your favor, good for you. You should be able to enjoy that for the rest of the term of your mortgage. There should not be an opportunity for the bank to change the bet when you're mid-game. And that's what they're doing over there. Don't get it wrong. That's what they're doing over there. And the people have to stand up against that kind of malarkey, because it's terrible. It's terrible for people. Like, what happens to a family who buys a home at 3% because they can afford it, and then they reset the rate in 5 years, and it's now 6.5%, and their payment goes from $1,300 a month to $3,000 a month, and wages haven't increased at the same rate? How do you propose that family is going to create the money?
It's the biggest challenge that we here as Canadians are dealing with right now. It's a freaking mess, to be very clear. And we talk about this a lot on this show and on our webinars. Is when we're talking about a lot of these different markets, affordability is one of the key determining factors that we're paying very, very close attention to. Because if you look at markets like Toronto and Vancouver, where I'm obviously based, the affordability is just insanity. Like, the mortgages and again, how do you offset double, or in some cases even triple your mortgage payment. And then for a lot of people that are investors in this space and people that aren't, that's even worse, to be honest with you. They've gone and dipped into their home equity lines of credit, which you guys have as well, and they dipped into it. They bought a boat, they bought a car, but now it's just like, okay, there's no income coming from this. And then to add insult to injury, and again, whole different discussion. You know, you got rent controls all over the place in different markets as well, so you're limited to what you're able to do. It's a really frustrating component. And I'm like, I'm sure there's probably challenges down south as well, but and up here it's a big problem. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot of people moving down, not, I should say moving, but they're looking in the US for different opportunities based on a lot of the things you've just referenced, Jamil. And it's just, it's crazy, right? So it's, yeah, it's frustrating. It really is.
There are, so what's really interesting is, I've become the nation's largest wholesaler here in America, but I'm Canadian bred, right? I learned the model. I came to the United States, right? And I have this trick up my sleeve of how to flip a contract and do this thing. And I think I invented like Velveeta, right? I'm like, I'm over here and I'm just like, I got this thing. And you can be rich beyond your wildest dreams. And and then I find out that it's been in existence over here for decades. A guy named Carlton Sheets used to do late night infomercials teaching people about it. And there are like these gurus who teach people about it on the internet and all the things. And I'm like, and it's got a name and it's called wholesaling. And I was like, whoa, I didn't invent this. No, you didn't. But you're really good at it, so you should do it here. And that's what I did, right? I first came to the US after the financial collapse in '08. And I'm really just licking my wounds. I'd lost millions of dollars in the debacle. I lost my family's nest egg as well, because I convinced my mother and father to co-sign construction loans for me. And when it all went south, everything was taken away, right? From our personal residences to some of our vehicles, everything was gone. And it was really unfortunate. And so, in unfortunate times, people become comedians. And that's what I did. I left Canada to move to the United States to pursue a career in comedy. And I went to Los Angeles and was doing open mics and all the things. But I have this like trick up my sleeve on how to flip contracts. And so now I'm looking at like flipping U.S. property in order to sustain my life in the United States. And I start doing it, right? And it happens so fast. I see a property that was, well priced. I put it under contract. I write an ad on Craigslist and I made $18,000 in like 15 minutes. And then that's when I just knew. I was like, I'm not meant to be a comedian. I meant to continue doing this thing that I'm naturally gifted at, and teach people how to do. So I bring this up because I've got so many Canadian students that are virtually wholesaling in the United States, because you can, and they are enjoying, and they can do it all from there because of their internet connections and access to a telephone. And you can negotiate contract property, you can wholesale property from Canada in the United States. You just need an ITIN number, which is like a foreign kind of tax ID. You can start an US based LLC, and you can make this a passive side hustle or a full-time business. One of my students who's wholesaling out of Edmonton, in his first quarter, so he started let's say 2 quarters. He started in the second quarter of last year, and in the second half of the second quarter into the third and fourth, he learned first. Third and fourth, he started actually putting the work into practice, and he did over $200,000 US in wholesale fees. And he's like, man, I can't do this in my own business here, right? So it's really cool, man. You've got a lot of there's a lot of opportunity. One last thing, because I know I'm talking a lot. One of the things that bothers me as well about what's going on up there is access to information, right? In the United States, if I want to comp a property, so if I want to understand what something is worth, which you fundamentally need to know in wholesaling in order to be able to make a profit. One of the things that I had a blessing of was when I had that buyer in my hand that told me what he would pay for that property. I just knew I had to get that property cheaper. Right. And because I knew I had a buyer at 400, if I get it for anything less, I'm okay. Now, when I started flipping buildings, I again went and asked developers, what's the price per door for this kind of product that you want to pay? and they would tell me I want to be under 140 a door, 130 a door, 150 a door, depending on suite mix, concrete or wood, and parking. And that was like, those are the things that the developers for condo conversions had in mind for me, right? Is it what's it made out of? What kind of parking does it have? And what's the suite mix? Those are the things that I care about. And if all these, and location, of course, and if all these things match, this is the price per door I can give you. And I know that equation, so I can go and just arbitrage below. But if you don't know what something is worth, then it's impossible to find out what you need to buy it for to be able to make a profit. And so the fact that you don't have a Zillow or a Redfin or some form of comping software that the general public can use, I again feel is oppressively criminal, because you've got the power in the hands of real estate agents who are supposed to be your fiduciary. But look at the number of fraud complaints against that industry, and you tell me how fiduciary those people actually behave. And when they are holding the comps in their hands, and how many real estate agents have you spoken to that do all kinds of gymnastics to justify value that doesn't exist because they want you to buy that property so that they can get their commission? That's the BS I'm talking about. And real estate agents would be held to a higher standard of operations if information was accessible to everybody in Canada so that they can see what's a property worth without this bozo telling me what it's worth, either lower or higher than what it is in order to get a listing or to sell it. And that's one of the things that I think is happening right now that's just absolutely BS out there.
There's no question that that does happen for sure. And like even myself, I'm a teacher as well, Jamil, and so that's one of the things we teach is like we don't want them to make the decisions on what the comparables are. Give me everything that's sold in the last 6 months, everything. I don't need you to tell me to dictate all that stuff. But you're absolutely right. Now you touched. There's so much stuff that you're to unpack here. Like honestly, I love that your starting point was like 2002 because it was exactly the same when I started too, is over 20 years ago, and there wasn't this internet thing. There was you're kind of trying to figure all this stuff out by keep put your hand over your eyes and just hope for the bloody best and see what's going on, right? That's the way we used to do it. But in this generation, you guys don't realize how much information that you guys have that's available to you guys to learn all these very unique strategies. But the one thing that really kind of stuck out to me just based on our discussion was, you no credit, no money, none of this stuff like that. And for a lot of people that are listening to this right now, I think there's only like 3 listeners, just to be honest with you, Jamil, but I'm just joking.
If there's one and their eyes get opened up to something, then my time was worth it, and yours as well. Because bro, I there was nobody to help me back then, and I needed it. I was lost, and so like I'm grateful for you that you do this for people there, and the fact that they're listening and doing things to change their lives. It's meaningful, man. Keep going.
Appreciate that. This, and I think you agree the same thing. This is our way of kind of giving back, learning from our experiences to help support you guys in your journey. And this one is really, I really wanted to have Jamil on specifically to talk to the wholesalers. And it's exactly the individuals that you've just referenced as yourself, is like, no money, no credit. How the hell do I get started in this business? Like, I don't have any money. And everybody's talking multifamily, land development, all these different strategies, but it goes right back to the simplicity of I don't have any money. I don't have any credit. How do I get in? And here's something that you figured out for yourself on your very own, and an infomercial that you realized it wasn't your wonderful idea, but you did it. And I think for a lot of people, truthfully for myself, I'm happy to pay wholesale deals, just so you guys are well aware. As for many people that know myself, I'm in the multifamily space. I have spent tens of thousands of dollars in wholesale deals. And it goes right back to exactly what you said is, what am I looking for in a deal and an opportunity? And I honestly, if the deal makes sense, I don't mind even spending $100,000 on an opportunity.
I used to make 100 grand on every one of my assignment fees on a building. I buy it for 1.1, I'd flip it for 1.2. I'd buy it for 1.4, I'd flip it for 1.5. 100 grand was my standard. That's where I was. But the way I would see it is that I was only making 5K a door or whatever, and I was just, but 100 grand was where I wanted to be. And so I just negotiated myself into that $100,000 position, and I made it every time.
So like to go back, it's like it, for a lot of people that are just getting started in this wholesaling business, you might put those barriers in front of you saying, who the hell's going to pay me 50 grand or $100,000? Listen, I'm telling you point blank. And Jamil's perfect a testament to this. He's doing this himself. But here in Canada, to be honest, I feel it's just not done very, very well here. Like, and I'm talking this specific market, but I think what a lot of wholesalers, there's people like in Calgary or Vancouver and Edmonton, and you would think that there's some opportunities right now, especially with some of the challenging times for wholesaling. This is a perfect opportunity. People are struggling and there's pain, and God forbid they have to pay like a realtor's fee, but there are opportunities right now. And I think people would be very intrigued to learn a little bit more about how you do this strategy specifically, and how have you had success. And I think people want to hear about it from the US perspective with some of the things that you're doing, because to be very clear, and I just don't think it's taught very, very well out here. And it's not to say that you don't teach it well. It's just I just don't think in general it's just not taught very, very well. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your strategy, how do you do this? How do you have success in this strategy? Because there's people listening that are just like, I've tried, I've knocked on doors, nobody wants to talk to me. It's like, so maybe share about why are you one of the top wholesalers in US, and what are some of the secrets to your success to help these individuals?
Okay, happy to. So the reason I'm the most successful wholesaler in the country is because I'm lazy. And I understood how the shortest distance to get to where I wanted to do was going to be through relationships and not transactions. And now let me explain what I mean. Okay. So when I first got started, I'm looking at like, okay, I got to knock on doors, or I got to cold call these homeowners, and I got to get in front of them, and I got to ask them, if they're interested in selling their house. And then I got to convince them to sell directly to me and not use a real estate agent who they trust. They've got this freaking ladies, magnet on their fridge since 1984. It's all sun bleached and everything. She doesn't look like that anymore. Her phone number might not even be accurate any longer, but that's who she's going to call when it's time to sell that house. Don't you better believe it. She's got loyalty to Bonnie over there on the fridge, right? And so because of that, of course, you're going to get the odd homeowner who you'll build rapport with, and they might sell to you and not call Bonnie, whatever that is. But all that work, all that effort, all that rapport, all that trust to build, to end it in one deal, right? Here's the example. The lady I bought that house from for $350 didn't sell me a second house, right? She didn't. All the work I did there happened one time, and the way it was over, I had to go and do it all over again, right? I had to go back and mine for business. Now, I'm not saying I don't have to mine for business anymore, but I figured out there's a better way, right? So I decided to pivot away from going directly to the homeowner and to create my business built on relationships with agents. And I became the cash solution for all of these real estate agents that were looking to get rid of houses that weren't retail ready. Now, again, guys, when you're wholesaling, you can't wholesale a pretty house. You can't wholesale a pretty condo. You can't wholesale a pretty apartment building. You can't wholesale things where appreciation has already been forced. That's not potential. That's not a deal. Wholesaling is selling potential, meaning we have to find a way to force appreciation or to create a money-making opportunity from that piece of property before it'll be valuable to somebody else for them to be able to pay you. So we're looking for the opportunity. And if you can find the opportunity, then you will be able to find the buyer. For me, I became the hub for real estate agents in my neighborhood and in my area here in Phoenix, Arizona, as the go-to guy to call when they've got a hoarder house, when they've got disrepair and they don't have the money to fix it, or they need cash now, or somebody just went to prison and they need all that, whatever. There's so many reasons of life that pop up: divorce, sickness, death. So much happens, and it sucks, right? But those are typically the inciting incidences that create opportunity. And that's where and because I don't want to necessarily be the person that's talking to the dude who's like got cancer that needs to sell his house, which is terrible, but I'll work with his agent, right? And then now they've got a fiduciary in place so that, they can be there representing them and helping them out. My job is creating the relationships with the agents who trust me that I'm going to perform. And then that's it, right? So what I did is I essentially cold call real estate agents en masse. And I would do that every single day. And I would follow up with them every single day. And I came to some specific metrics. If I talked to 50 agents every single day, okay, and I followed up with 50 agents every single day, meaning 50 new outreach, 50 follow-ups. If I did that every single day, I could build a business where I'm doing 5 to 10 deals a month. And that's what I do. And it not only worked, I was able to replicate that and train that to my teams, who are then able to replicate that and train that to our reps, who are then able to replicate that and train that to our franchises. And now that is what I coach to my people. And it's not just that simple. There's nuance in the conversations. There's ways to really do this in a way where You can scale it because, again, having those phone calls is time consuming and tough. So I built software that actually texts real estate agents. Now, here's one of the funny things. There's a lot of guidelines and restrictions on cold calling and texting homeowners because it's the public, right? But when a real estate agents advertise their phone number for business purposes, now they're no longer protected under that ordinance or those guidelines, which means I can communicate to them how I so choose because they've advertised their phone number to be communicated to. Now, because of that, I go and I scrape lists like realtor.com, redfin.com, zillow.com, where people have advertised their cell phone numbers. And I built a software that has AI technology in it so that the communication is dynamic and changing, and it texts them for me. And it creates and carries on a conversation with this real estate agent through text message until the agent either needs to have the conversation with me as a human, or it provides me an address that I need to now go and value. And that's what we do. And so I set my program up to do the thing it does. And then it has the conversations it has. And then it does the follow-up that it does. And then every day I look at who I got to talk to and who I need to further conversations with by voice. And that's how we do it. Right. And now we can do this instead of having 50 conversations a day. I can have 250 conversations a day. And so I can build this out at scale. And essentially, that's how you build a nationally franchised organization that does 100 of these transactions in certain markets every single month. Right. And that's what I've been able to do. And it's because I look at it from the relationship standpoint instead of the transactional standpoint that things went well. In addition to that, I became the distribution hub of these deals as well. So for other people that are learning how to wholesale, if you're focused on acquisitions, for instance, right? Let's just say like you're a guy out there bird dogging over here, wanting to get deals for your organization. Let's say like you want to, like you say, hey guys, I like to buy wholesale deals. They're like, okay, like I want to sell you wholesale deals. Great. You're out there looking, you find an opportunity, you bring it and you take a look at it and you're like, nah, it's not for me. It's maybe too far away from where I like to work, or maybe they just got a little bit too high or whatever it is. Something about it you don't like, so you pass. That doesn't make it a bad deal. It just makes it not for you, right? And so what many investors do is they go and they work and they try and they get the first deal, and then somebody says no, and they're like, oh, okay. And they quit, right? They stop. They just stop right there. And so I saw that. And then what would happen is a chain reaction of BS. Because now they've made a promise to this homeowner that they're going to sell, that they're going to close, right? And this is problematic. And so let's just say they canceled during their contingency period. Okay, so you didn't lose money. The seller isn't happy, but you've canceled. But you're deflated. You feel like you failed. You feel like you wasted time, and you kind of did. And that's hard to swallow. And then you've got your friends and family and maybe your spouse saying, what are you doing, man? Like, are you sure? You're signing contracts, you're putting checks out for deposits, and like, who's teaching you this? And what are you doing? Like, what if you F up and get us sued? Right. And so there's all these fears that start to come into play. And then that becomes a part of the story that tells you this isn't a good idea. And then eventually that story wins and you just give up. Right. And so I saw that happen and en masse here in the United States. And I said, wait, there's got to be a better way for these guys to sell their deals when someone like you passes on it, their pocket buyer, the people that they naturally do business with most. And so what we did is we built Keyglee, which is a distribution hub, which is essentially a disposition wholesaler. So when you bring a contract, you come to a company like mine, Keyglee, we'll sell it for you. And that's why I got franchises all across the country that sell contracts to investors. So my job as an organization is to connect with cash buyers everywhere in the United States. And we build relationships with buyers. You go out and get the contract and we'll connect it to our buyer and we both win. And because I saw that my longevity in this business wasn't going to, like, here's the thing, right? And I like to use the music business as an example. Now, Michael Jackson, one of the greatest musicians to ever live. Whatever he did, outside in his personal life, let's leave that in another world. But one of the greatest musicians that ever lived, right? Maybe he wasn't the best example to use, but anyways, so at the end of the day, who won, Michael Jackson or Sony? Because Michael Jackson's dead, right? And fame, built him up and threw him out. But at the end of the day, Sony is still getting paid. right? And so do you want to be the artist or do you want to be the record label? And so that's what I looked at in this whole thing. I'm like, dude, I'm only going to be able to have the energy to get out there and do this for so long before my body and my mind and my energy give out on me. And I don't want to be, you know, the washout, the wash up, the like the guy who like star fades, you know. And even though I got some notoriety right now and a little bit of light on me in the light in life, I could give a crap about it because I'm still just as happy walking in Temple, Northeast Calgary, you know, in scrubby clothes as I am living in on the on the water in LA in my beach house. I'm just as comfortable in both locations and just as proud of myself and just as happy and just as fulfilled. And so that is power to me, right? Because you can put me anywhere and I'm going to kill it. And so that's going to be how you'll survive this. This is like, if you're listening to this right now and you're like, how am I going to do this? Well, be that person that has just an unfathomable belief in themselves, and then choose where you're going to be in an equation that's going to give you the most power. And for me, it's in being a distributor, right? I don't want to be just the guy who's out there doing the mining, but you got to start there. So if you want to do this business, right, then figure out how to do it from all angles, and then see where you have scalability and interest and passion, and then double down there, and then don't expect that you're going to need to know step 10, because God will give you step 2. God will always give you step 2. It'll light up step 2 for you, but it won't let you see step 3, step 4, step 5. And what's incredible is that when you can abandon not knowing, you're on the way, right? I truly believe that faith in the unknown is the way. And that is how you're going to win, man. You're not going to win thinking you've got this thing mapped out and figured out. Faith in the unknown is the way. God will illuminate step 2 for you, and then just take it and see what happens where step 3 gets illuminated, and so on and so forth, until you're where you want to be.
I hope everybody's listening to this. This is some serious wisdom that's being shared, because I could not agree more. It's just a lot of people actually put this big obstacle for themselves because they don't know step 10, and they're just like, I don't know what that is. But you just have to persevere. You have to push forward. Don't worry about step 10 when you are actually in step number 2. Stay focused on that objective. That's going to be coming later on, and just kind of just push forward. Because I actually find, and I'm sure you probably agree, Jamil, is just that even though you don't know it, that the real lessons are in that step 2, the mistakes, the challenges, the issues that come along with this, so you can move up to the next specific step. But I think you just highlighted on some key things. Obviously, one of them is just working smarter, not so much harder. But I think you do have to work very hard, especially in this investment strategy when you first begin with too. And the biggest obstacle, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the perseverance part. It's just like they don't get their first deal, or it didn't work as well as they were hoping to, and they just kind of absolutely give up. And I don't know I don't know if you can share a story of, did that ever happen to you, or that frustration part when you first started this kind of business for yourself? And that might even be a pro and con to this business. And maybe you can share a little bit about this.
Well, I was extraordinarily lucky that my first deal I ever did worked, right? And so proof of concept was something I had, and I think that it was given to me by design, because I'm supposed to be this person that guides people in this industry. Like I do believe I'm living my purpose in this world, doing this and helping people understand this so that they can be financially free. Um, but anything that you do, like look at medicine for me, right? That was my first obstacle. And it was, and in my family, right? Coming from an East Indian background, we had one option for success in life, and it was to be a doctor or maybe an engineer, but like beyond that, you're not going to be able to survive. You're not going to make it. You're going to be poor. You're going to be like us. You're going to be like mom and dad. You're going to inherit the generational curses that we all have if you can't have doctor as your prefix in your name. And so because that eluded me, I had necessarily given up any chance of having a beautiful life, a fulfilling, abundant life, because I didn't get what the obstacle that came to me didn't allow me to pursue the thing that I wanted to pursue. And I didn't see that what really happens in life is that when we get beat up, we're being prepared, right? Just like when you're marinating a steak, you're beating that steak and you're preparing it for what it's going to become, right? When you exercise and you grow muscle, you're tearing the muscle apart so that it can grow back and become bigger and stronger. And so when you're seeing these obstacles, there are ways to guide you, to strengthen you, to develop you, to be being that version of you that is going to be what's needed in the world. And that, I think, is where, if you give up on obstacle one, then you're just saying, you know what, I'm totally okay with mediocrity. Now, let's look at Maslow's pyramid as an example. Okay. We all remember Maslow's pyramid from elementary school because I was taught Maslow's pyramid in elementary school and I went to a Canadian elementary school. So I'm imagining the people that are watching this know what I'm saying. But do you remember Maslow's pyramid by chance? No. Okay. So Maslow's pyramid is this incredible, and I wish I could share my screen, but it's this incredible organization of what happens to us in our lives, and it starts with understanding survival, right? And it starts off with basic needs like food, water, shelter, and then next it's like procreation. So I need a mate. I need to be able to protect that mate, and then it's like, okay, now I need to like survive and then think about the future. So it's not just about now, like immediate food, immediate water, immediate shelter. It's not just about immediate procreation and immediate companionship. Now it's about future. And then you start to get into this higher center of planning. And then what ends up happening is we ascend up this pyramid, we ascend in this model until this point where we actualize as humans. And I believe that that actualization process is different for every and unique for every human being, but it is becoming the aligned with our divinity or our purpose of being here. Like if we're going to look at it from biblical senses or any spiritual sense, it is being your realized version, the Christ in you, if you can embody that. And it's everyone has that right. Everybody has that potential within them. Whether or not we actually exercise that and live in it, it is for you to decide. But here's the thing: you can't skip steps. And so for me, right, I'm on that path. I'm on this path towards trying to understand. And I'm not going to pretend here and say to anybody that I'm this enlightened human that has like all the answers. I'm still very much I'm dumb as rocks. Okay. I'm trying. I'm just learning every day. But what I do know is that you have to touch money before you're going to understand that it's not it. And my job is to get people to that spot. I'm going to help you touch money so that you can understand that it's not it, so that you can get on to higher pursuits. Because until you're on to higher pursuits, that's where you're going to find your purpose. And until you touch money and you understand that, okay, a few $1,000,000 isn't it. I'm not going to find my fulfillment in millions. I'm not going to find my fulfillment in these things that I thought were going to give me fulfillment. Until you touch that and you find out that it wasn't it, you're not going to pursue higher purposes. And my job is to get you there, and then you're on your own, and you'll find other teachers to take you past that. That's not my job, but I'll get you to the money, and then I'm leaving you there. And so that's what I've dedicated my life to, man. I'm here to pop people's financial prison, and I'm gonna do that so that you can do other stuff. And if you can do other stuff, and you start living less in the mind and more in the heart, because that's, I think, the journey that we're all here to take is out of our minds and into our hearts. And it's such a short distance, but it takes the longest time. It's like this can take 90 years for the journey from the mind to the heart, right? And it's like, but that's what we're all on.
Man, so much wisdom there. So much wisdom. I just love this. Jamil, I want to thank you. We're kind of getting close to the top of the hour here, and I want to appreciate everything. And I do. I really appreciate everything you've shared with everybody. But I want to ask you one last question, even though you've pretty much answered most of this already. But I do like to ask our guests this. 20-year investor, gone through challenges, obstacles, focusing on a very unique strategy as well. And you have shared some words of wisdom, but is there any final words of wisdom that you would like to share for newbie investors or newbie wholesalers or people that have been in this business for a long time, just based on your experience, that, just kind of a final sign off to help support our investors that are in this business today?
Yeah. Success is an inside job. It's an inside job. It's not a trick. It's not a technique. It's not a tactic. It's not a person. It is a vibration. It is in you, and you will not succeed until inside is successful. And it's look, man, it is the wave function. If you look at anything in life, it's a wave, right? And we can vibrate at higher or lower amplitude. And so if you're finding yourself in a world or in a life where you're having meaningless arguments over trivial things, you're in a lower vibration in life. I'm sorry to say it, but it's what's happening. And you have the choice to change it. We all can choose in every single moment. Every moment is a birthplace of infinite possibility for you. And all it sometimes takes is somebody's words to illuminate in your mind what you're doing. And it's almost like the scales fall from your eyes and you see the creation you're holding in your hand, and it's not what you want. And you have the ability to put it down. You have the ability to walk away, and you have the ability to start something brand new. And you can change the way that you vibrate inside. You can change the way that you are feeling inside, through some very, very easy techniques, right? Things like meditation, things like nervous system regulation through breath work, positive affirmations, and really creating new neural pathways in your brain in a way that helps you access your subconscious so that you can actually start paying attention to opportunities in life that exist in every moment, instead of paying attention to the dangers in life that exist in every moment. And when your perspective and your eyeballs shift to the right thing, it'll put you on a path to where you're wanting to go. And when you get there, call me up and say hi.
Oh, love it. Love that. Man, such amazing content, guys. There's a reason why I'm a big fan of this guy, and like I said, one of the things he's just shares such wisdom. Obviously, a very savvy investor himself, but at the end of the day, just listen to some of these big gold nuggets that he's sharing with everybody. Jamil, if people wanted to follow you, learn more about you, learn about your community of wholesalers, I know you teach this. You've got a great tool, as you were referencing as well earlier today. What's the best place to kind of maybe connect and learn more about you?
So I'm on Instagram at JDAMJI at JDamji. You can find me on my YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/Jamil Damji. That's JAMIL DAMJI. Send me a DM on Instagram. Happy to respond. Let me know you're Canadian. I love connecting with Canadians, and I'm in Calgary all the time, and it's not a difficult thing to get. I think Lynx Airline is like super economical, and you can get to Calgary. And I'm going to put on little meetups out there for Canadians to come and hang out, and we can talk shop. And so pay attention to my Instagram. I plan to be in Calgary once a month, every month, as I have a daughter out there that you guys probably don't know about, but I come to visit her in Calgary every month. And so I also will be putting on little meetups, get-togethers, pop-ups, let's meet for lunch kind of deal. And I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to be a part of your journey. I'm honored to be able to be on this show with you guys today, to be able to share the things that I've learned. And I hope that as you guys all pursue your paths, you'll do the same when given the opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And guys that are listening, most of this information will be put in the description as well below. But again, guys, highly recommend give him a quick follow. And for those that are in Calgary, you heard what he just said. So if he's going to be setting up some meetups, highly recommend you get out to go check him out. But Jamil, thank you. I honestly, this has been a fantastic podcast with just significant wisdom being shared, and you can just tell and feel the passion of what you have, in not just in the real estate world, but just in life in general. So thank you for being here. Really, really
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Appreciate you. Thanks for the invitation.
Guys, just wrapped up a great session with Jamil. Wonderful session. So much wisdom talking about wholesaling, just talking about life in general, and just overcoming some of these major obstacles. Jamil, maybe just kind of highlight some of the key things that we were talking about in today's podcast.
Absolutely. So we talked a lot about some of the challenges that I faced as a Canadian investor, how I overcame some of those challenges, how I started my wholesaling journey in Calgary, Alberta, and now have become one of the largest wholesalers, if not the largest wholesaler in the United States. Also, really diving into the mindset of a successful entrepreneur and how you can hack yourself to be all that you want. And so, guys, we absolutely hope that you check this out and see us in the podcast.
Awesome. Check it out, guys. It's a great session.